Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. That is the recruitment of five-star wing Tyran Stokes. And if you listen to the Aaron Torres pod, and obviously you do because you're hearing me say this right now, whether you're listening live, listening on replay, podcast, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, whatever, you know we've talked a lot about Tyron Stokes, okay? And it's for good reason. Number one high school player in America, class of 2026. So number one player going into his senior year. And, first of all, just a really good player. 6'7", power player. I think what really impresses me about him is his ability to kind of be a chameleon, can be the star of the show like he is in high school, can be the star of the show like he is with the Oakland Soldiers, AAU circuit, but then also Team USA, when they needed him to take a back seat, when they needed him to be a role player, when they needed him to be instant offense off the bench, he backed, I don't want to say backed off because that sounds negative, but he kind of acquiesced to the Mikel Brown Jr.'s, Koa Pete's, AJ DeBonsas, etc. Well, I bring it up because we have talked a lot about him. We've certainly talked about his recruitment. I think like probably maybe 2 or 3 times in the last month, 6 weeks. I don't even know. If you listen to this show, you know we've talked about it a lot, okay? And we even talked about it, I should mention, last week because I did my annual projecting where every five-star is going to commit to play college basketball. And so we talked about every player, and I will readily admit, I said, look, everything's trending towards Kentucky. This is a Kentucky native, but he's also a Louisville native. And so early in his recruitment, it felt like a Louisville lean, maybe even a Louisville hard lean where he was like an overwhelming favorite. And then the buzz coming out of Peach Jam was that Kentucky had taken a lead. So I bring it up because I think a lot of you know where I'm going, but Tyron Stokes gave just a hint of an update over the course of the weekend, which I do think that we should probably discuss. That hint was that he actually had I don't know if it was an NIL setup. He was back in Louisville, though, and he was in Louisville doing some kind of event, and in it, he gave a media availability press conference where he basically was asked about where he was leaning in college in his recruitment. Okay. So he gave 2 different quotes that were interesting. Let's get to the first one, producer Matt, probably not as important. Asked what he was looking for in a college. He said, definitely development is one of the things. A good foundation, someone who has fans and puts their all into the school. Not just someone who says, oh, we have a good football team or a good basketball team. I want to go somewhere where I can have a good time actually experiencing college, go to a nice football game, have a nice baseball team to go to, just experience school. So first of all, I love this quote because I think this is the sad reality of being a one and done is, you only get 9 months on campus, and he clearly wants to experience everything. He wants to fit 4 years of fun into his college experience. You go back to last year. I remember there being a story, Cooper Flagg, basically, what was it? It was maybe Labor Day weekend. All the players went home except for Cooper Flagg because he's just like, I just want to be on campus because I know I'm not going to be here for very long. So I love that Tyron Stokes has the awareness. Now, it was funny because all of a sudden, when this quote popped up on social media, I instantly saw Louisville fans, Kentucky fans, other fan bases arguing about whose football team was the best, whose football team was the worst, whose baseball team was the best, all that. I think we can all agree if he wants baseball, if his school list is probably Kentucky, Louisville, I would add Kansas and Arkansas. I'd certainly say Arkansas is the best baseball experience if you're looking for that. Football, I think it's a little bit more questionable. Now, I'll be transparent. I've been to games at Kroger Field where it's sold out, loud, and crazy. I've also seen what it's like, the last end of last season when they were losing to Auburn and Vandy and teams like that. So I don't know how the football experience is there. I think Arkansas, I've been to Razorback Stadium. I've never been to a game there, though. I could see where that place would get crazy. I could see where that place wouldn't get crazy. So there's that. I think it'll be interesting, by the way. He has not taken a visit to Arkansas yet. They obviously have a couple big home games, including September 29th when they host Notre Dame. So that was the first quote. But this was the quote that caught everybody's attention, and it's because of the context behind it. Asked also what he was looking for in a college experience, Tyran Stokes followed up by adding, quote, I also want a school that's not going to duck the smoke. That's it. I don't like ducking the smoke, so I want everybody on the schedule. If I could get North Carolina, Duke, anybody on the schedule, that's all I want. Now, that just feels like a quote, a great quote. Doesn't want to duck the smoke. I think, one, probably eliminate North Carolina and Duke from his list. But two, in truly only a story that could really surface in the internet message board era, there were a couple interesting follow-up quotes about this. So here's the thing. Again, Tyron Stokes says, I do not want to duck the smoke. I am not ducking the smoke. Well, I bring it up because even yesterday on our Where Will All the 5 Stars Commit video, I saw a comment where somebody said, bro, Tyron Stokes is quoting Pat Kelsey. He's going to Louisville. And I was like, whoa, what do you mean he's quoting Pat Kelsey? I didn't put two and two together until I started looking into it today. Here is what Pat Kelsey had to say a few months ago when asked about Louisville's 2026 schedule. So remember, Louisville last year was an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament, and part of it was that really they didn't have the toughest schedule. The ACC was down, whatever. Louisville beefs up their schedule by adding Memphis, by adding Baylor, Arkansas in the Big 12, Big 10, ACC, SEC challenge. They're playing Arkansas. Arkansas is not in the Big 10 or the Big 12. They're playing, again, Arkansas, Baylor, whatever, plus, of course, Kentucky. Pat Kelsey, when asked about why he put together such a daunting schedule, said, quote, what I do want to do is make sure that when we get to the NCAA tournament and the selection committee is looking at us, they know one thing. Louisville did not duck the smoke. They didn't duck the smoke. So that was our approach this year. Tyron Stokes, when asked what he was looking for in a college, almost quite literally verbatim quotes something that Pat Kelsey said a few weeks ago. Now, why is it also interesting? Because Louisville fans are taking a victory lap over that quote. This was around the time of the NCAA tournament. Mark Pope was talking about Kentucky, and he said, quote, you don't come to Kentucky if you're trying to run from the smoke. So, very interesting. Mark Pope, almost verbatim, saying the same thing that Pat Kelsey almost said verbatim, which at the same time is something that Tyran Stokes also said on Sunday when asked about his college decision. And so this has become almost a pseudo, let's just call it what it is, a you-know-what measuring contest for these two fan bases. Who is ducking the smoke less? I don't know that it really means anything, okay? I hate to burst everybody's bubble. And is Tyran Stokes, I'm not saying. Seems like a bright kid. Very self-aware, I think, in this NIL world. I live in SoCal where he's playing his high school ball. Everybody who's around him loves him. Was he that aware to specifically sit on that quote and say, well, Pat Kelsey said this or Mark Pope said this, I'm going to quote him verbatim? So to me, probably doesn't mean all that much, but I'll also say this, maybe it does. I will say in all seriousness, this is what I will say. I know what I said last week, okay? I said if I was picking today, I would pick Kentucky as the favorite with Tyran Stokes. I do think this is ultimately going to come down to a Louisville and Kentucky battle, though. Okay, so that is where I would frame this, and that is where I would say, did the quote actually mean anything? Probably not. But at the same time, like I do think it is interesting, and I do think it will be between these two schools. Now, I've heard all sorts. Circuit influence is a little bit overrated. I also think, in some ways, what Tyran Stokes' mom said was a little bit overrated as well, because she was asked about the recruitment. She said, we're from Louisville. Louisville fans don't watch Kentucky games. So I think all of that is a little bit overrated. But what I do think is it's going to come down to these two schools. Listen, he visited Kansas. To the degree that shoe affiliation matters, Kansas is an Adidas school. That's not a great sign. I also, and I said this a few days ago, but like Bill Self, listen, we're all rooting for a speedy recovery. I'm not wishing ill will upon him as he went in for a second heart procedure in 3 years. I don't know how much longer he can do this. I don't know how much longer he will do this. And I think as long as he's coaching, there are going to be those questions around him. So I don't really know that Kansas is in the mix. Arkansas, I get the Calipari ties. Calipari, the one and done king. But even Calipari, like I think Calipari would take Tyran Stokes if he had the chance. But the counter to that is Calipari's kind of rebranded himself as like he's not really the one and done guy anymore. Like, oh, he'll still show up courtside to support Jamal Murray or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Devin Booker, but he's kind of been public about like the days of recruiting 4, 5, 6 freshmen are over, and you have to be really selective in this era of college basketball that we're in. And so to me, I ultimately think it is going to be a Louisville versus Kentucky recruitment. I know what I said last week because I already know what the comments are going to say. Torres, you're just flip-flopping. You're just playing both sides. Listen, if I had to pick today, I'd probably lean Kentucky. Tyron Stokes' camp has said it's going to come sometime after the season starts. I don't know that we're on the 1-yard line, but it certainly was an interesting quote, to say the least, from Tyron Stokes, who says, I am not ducking the smoke. And, of course, those were quotes that Pat Kelsey and Mark Pope said.